Welcome to the Bladtcast. Joining me now is musician Jeff Pilson, whom you may know from Dawkins, Lynch Mob, Foreigner, and from a whole other bunch of things that we'll talk about during the course of our conversation. But we're here to talk to him today about the End Machine. They have a new album out called Phase 2, which is available now. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Well, thank you, man. Good to be here.
And, a couple of months ago, right before it came out, I talked to Robert Mason about the album, and I had told him how much I was really enjoying it. I was listening to it a lot, ramping up to it. And I told him at that point that my favorite song on it was Crack the Sky. And I think at that point, he's like, well, funny enough, that's our next single. And I know there's a video now.
Yes.
So I wanted to kind of start right there. We'll kind of talk about End Machine as a whole, but let's talk a little bit about that song and how people have responded to the album, because it's been out for about 2 months now, and talk a little bit about the selection of Crack the Sky.
All right. Well, that was a large question. So
sorry, they tend to be.
Yeah, so that's okay. Okay, basically, so yeah, you're showing the video there. The reason we chose that song is it's just a catchy song, and it's a fun song, and I love the message, a little bit about big brothers watching you kind of thing. It's just, the whole record, we really wanted to concentrate on making great songs, and catchy, infectious songs. That was the goal, with great playing, great singing. And we feel like we delivered that. It's good to see that a lot of people are acknowledging that, so it's great. Yeah, I mean, like I say, this is our place to do melodic hard rock with big heavy grooves but great melodies, and I'm very proud of this work, so glad we could be talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously there's, filming videos has been part of the business, for a lot of your career. Obviously it's a lot different now than I'm sure it was back in the days of doing a Dawkins video. But I feel like it's cool now that it seems like it's whatever the band wants it to be. And a lot of times, obviously, I talked a little bit to Robert about this. The key was you guys wanted to be outside because, obviously still concerns about COVID. So then you don't have to worry as much. But to me, it's just like watching a band play outside. It's like, it's cool. And then it's like, God, who carried those drums up that mountain? It's just, that's the sort of stuff that it doesn't take me out of it. It just makes me think about it from a production standpoint. It's like those amps didn't get up there themselves, did they?
No, they certainly did.
But talk kind of about, how sure, MTV isn't what it once was, but how a video can really be such a useful tool. So you might as well have it be something a little cool and tell a little story while you do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of answered it for me. Thank you. Yeah, basically, this is the tool that we have nowadays for promoting. I mean, you don't hear much hard rock on the radio, if any. It's in limited places. But people want to see this music. And so basically social media is used to present these videos. I mean, the budgets aren't like they were, 30 years ago at all. But that's okay, because it is more about the music than anything else. And, Robert's a great storyteller. So it's nice when his stories get to be exposed on these in something like video. I mean, I don't know if you get as much of the message as he intended for a lot of this. But it's still, you kind of get the point across. And I think more than anything, it's just people want to see a band making music. And because of this pandemic, I think we're all starved for live music or something that feels live. And I think when you see a bunch of guys playing outside like this, it kind of feels live. And I think people really dig it. And because it is the tool that we use, we just try to make videos that are believable and cool and good to watch. So hoping that we're achieving that, but really you're the one to decide that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, look, anytime somebody gets out of a car, it's what we saw just a second ago for those watching the video version. Somebody gets out of a car driving with a Guy Fawkes mask on. It's like, yeah, all right, that's what I want from my videos. It's like, don't take the time to explain it to me. Just show me cool stuff. And yeah, and look, it doesn't it's not distracting from the music at all. You really get to hear the song. And the first time I heard the song, it was to watch the video version of it, and I think it helps a lot. To just how the ease with which it's like, yeah, just click on this YouTube link. So yeah, it's obviously great as a tool in so many ways like that.
And small piece of trivia: the guy in the orange jumpsuit that you're seeing there, the actor, that's Dee Snider's son. Jesse.
Wow. Now, see, that's pretty cool. Now, how I'm going to assume, obviously, you've known Dee forever. How did that come about?
Forever. But actually, that is purely a coincidence. It was It was the video company. I didn't know until after they filmed his part. And then I texted Dee and I said, "You won't believe this," and he was like, "Whoa!"
Oh, that's so great.
Well, that's actually coincidental small world stuff that I love.
Oh, I think that's even better than it was just like, oh yeah, I knew Dee's son was an actor.
No, I had nothing to do with casting him. It was great.
Yeah. Well, obviously, this isn't the first time you've worked with Robert, and I mean, this is the band's second album, but and you've worked with George a lot over the years, since you first got into Dokken. So talk a little bit about what it is about George. I mean, people know him just as incredibly talented guitar player, but what is it that you keep going back to him? I mean, you've worked with him a number of times, on Lynch Mob and this and other projects as well. What is it about George Lynch that keeps you coming back?
Well, George and I kind of we kid around, but we're sort of serious when we call each other our musical soulmates. We just have a chemistry that has always worked. It worked from the very first day he first came over to the first day he ever came over to my house to pick me up. I just joined the band, and we were going to go out and do something. He came over to my house. He walked in the door. He saw my guitar sitting there. He picked it up. He started playing. We wrote a song. I mean, that's our chemistry. That is how we are. We've just always been like that. We bring out the best in each other, I think, and we have a lot of love and respect for one another, and we have a common goal always. So, and we enjoy it. I mean, let's face it, life should be enjoyable, and work, making music should be a joy. It shouldn't be pulling teeth. And a lot of times it is pulling teeth. And sure, sometimes things are rough, but you have to, I think the overall flow has to be one of enjoyment, and we do. We love working together. I mean, part of it is because we always are very happy with the results we come up with. Sure. I mean, not always. We've had our clunkers too, but as a rule, we really deliver to each other, and that's a great feeling. So of course I'm going to come back to him.
Yeah, as just somebody who is just a listener to the music and enjoys it, I think the idea when the musicians actually love what they're doing, you can tell the difference. When there are the guys who it is pulling teeth. It's like, well, we have to do another album, even though we hate each other. It doesn't always come across to that level. But you're like, okay, well, I'm not as excited about this. I might be more excited about that band when they really liked each other, So I think it's great that you're able to continue working with him. And we'll talk specifically about End Machine in a moment. But just sort of going back to, when you first got to know him. Now, obviously, I know better than to believe everything I read on Wikipedia. But they make it sound like you moved to LA and like a couple weeks later you auditioned for Dokken. So obviously you'd been in some bands and done a lot in San Francisco and other places before that. But how close is that to the truth? Did you get the opportunity to audition for Dokken early on into coming into LA?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's not that far from the truth. It was really a couple months. I moved to LA in March of '83, and I joined Dokken in August of '83. So there you go. When I came down, I joined a top 40 band. I had auditioned for them before we moved, and then when I moved down, I joined them. Was with them for a couple of months, and then I ended up joining a band with Paul Taylor, who later on helped form Winger. Amy Cannon, who is no longer with us, unfortunately, but she was one of the Nasty Habits for Motley Crue in the late '80s, early '90s. Mark Nelson, who's still a dear friend, and he's a big cheese at Roland Instrument Corporation now. He was a great drummer, and we had a band together. for a while, and Dokken came to see me with that band, and that was what I was doing right before I joined Dokken. So, not too far from the truth,
Right. Yeah, and it's obviously it seems like there was obviously so much going on in LA at that time. The fact that the band that you then end up leaving to join, you join Dokken and have all that success with them, and obviously have a great run there. And continuing to play with George over this time, and End Machine wasn't the first time you worked with Robert, because I know that he'd had some stints with Lynch Mob. But how does
that's actually
and I what's that? Sorry.
Well, I actually wasn't in the Lynch Mob. I have played on Lynch Mob records, and I've done bass on a couple songs, and I've done keyboards for him. And I mean, because we're close friends, I'll always do what I can to help.
Sure, yeah.
But I was actually never in the band. But I did work with Robert on the 2015 Warrant record, Louder, Harder, Faster.
Oh, okay.
And I have known Robert since he joined the Lynch Mob, which I believe was 92 or 3, something like that. And I knew him, and I knew he was great and all that. But I first got to really work with him in 2015 when we did the Warrant record, and that was when I realized how much talent he had, both as a writer. I mean, I knew about his voice. That was never a question in any way. But I got to see his work ethic. I got to see what a great writer he was. And like I say, his work ethic. He's a hard worker, and he gets the job done. And so I knew. Then it was Serafino from Frontiers Records that suggested him for what was then the original Dokken lineup minus Don, which was Wild Mick Brown, George, and myself. And when Robert was suggested as the drummer, it was a no-brainer, because I knew how great it'd be, and he sure has come through.
Yeah, and when I talked to Robert about it, I think that the thing that he was most interested in was that this wasn't a project where it's Dokken with Robert Mason singing, and it doesn't. Obviously George is going to sound like George, you're going to sound like you, but it doesn't sound like Dokken at all. So talk about approaching this project, in a way where it's like, but it's probably, I would say, stuff that it's not similar to what Robert does on the new Warrant records that he's done with them. And, I feel like it seemed to me to be a little bit different than what, people maybe had heard from you guys before. It's a little bit different.
All right. Not sure what the question was, but what I will say is, our first record, we were kind of experimenting a little bit, and we kind of wanted to try some different things. On this record, we knew we wanted to really focus on great songs and really, great choruses and that whole thing. So the writing was a little more focused this time.
Sure.
And to be honest with you, when there were moments when things did kind of sound a little like Dokken, we just said to ourselves, you know what? That's cool. That's who we are. George and I wrote a lot of the music for Dokken, so it's not that would not be crazy. So we didn't police ourselves as much, and we kind of felt like, okay, if it sounds like that, that's cool. Let's just make sure it's a great song, and that's what we did. And I feel like what we have is we do have our own identity. Sure, it's reminiscent of a Dokken or Lynch Mob or whatever. That, like you say, that's just only natural. But we're kind of finding this place that I'm really, really happy with, which is, it is definitely melodic rock. It is definitely the kind of music that Dokken made, but we're just trying to do a slightly updated but aggressive, complete version of that, and that's what I feel like we've done.
And I talked a little bit to Robert about this, but I think it's interesting for the second record that Mick basically retired from drumming. So I love the approach of, well, let's keep it in the family, and you have his brother as a drummer. And I remember, I think you were on with Eddie Trunk a couple months ago, somewhere in that range. I remember him saying, like, I didn't even know that Mick had a brother, let alone that he was a drummer. So, obviously that wasn't going to be like, oh yeah, his brother's a drummer, let's just use him. Talk about, the realization of like, well, this is the perfect guy to have sit in, on this record.
Well, we've known Steve since he was 15 years. I've known Steve since he was 15. George has known him I think he was like 4 or something when George met him. But anyway, we knew Steve was a great drummer. We knew, and he's been drumming for a long time. He played with us at a sound check like 35 years ago or something. So we knew he could play. I didn't realize how good he was though. We, you know, when Mick decided to retire, Mick had made the suggestion somewhere like, oh, you know, my brother, he's really great. And then we watched some videos, and then we had a meeting, and George said we should really call his brother. We're like, okay. And it turns out he came down here. He was completely prepared. Not only is he a great drummer, but he's great in the studio, and he was really able to make the tracks feel good on the fly. And not every drummer can do that. It's not the easiest thing to do, to take tracks that have already been recorded and then put the drums on it and make it feel like you're really playing together. And he did that. And he was able to just put all this energy into it. And then it turns out he's got this great singing voice, like his brother Mick. So I mean, I feel like we hit the lottery with that. I mean, it could have gone so far south, but it ended up being great. He's a great player, great singer, great guy. He's the perfect guy for the band. I mean, that is just not an exaggeration.
And you know, you talked a little bit about the process of collaborating. Obviously, when you guys would have been putting the album together, were you able to get together at all, or was it early enough in quarantine where people maybe weren't comfortable with it, or you know, were you sending each other different tracks, or how did it work in terms of actually putting the music together?
Well, we did. The writing took place remotely,
Right.
and actually, all of George's tracks were recorded remotely. Now, George doesn't live far from me, but because it was still COVID time and still no vaccine or anything, he did all his tracks remotely. Fortunately, there's some technology now where I can run his studio from my studio.
Oh, wow.
We would talk via Skype, and then we'd record as if I was in the room, only I was in my room. It was a little different, wasn't quite as intimate as we'd like, but it also kind of helped to keep us real focused and perhaps make things a little simpler. The writing, so the music, George and I wrote all remotely, but because we have such a great chemistry, it wasn't that difficult. We had also just done a record together called Heavy Hitters, which is us doing cover songs, which is really fun. It also made a great experimentation vehicle because we learned how to do this remote thing during that. That was really early in COVID. So the writing, we wrote the music remotely. Then we had a lot of three-way conversations on Zoom with Robert at the beginning of the writing process, just to make sure we were all on the same page as far as how the songs were going. And then Robert would take it away and do a lot of the lyrics himself, where he did an amazing job. So a lot of the writing was done ahead of time remotely, but then Robert and Steve both recorded their tracks here in person because it was late enough then that things were starting to get cool.
Yeah, and I feel like you know, trading the tracks sort of digitally like that is one thing, but if you were to actually try and record them, I feel like getting the vibe with everybody actually in the studio, I'm sure that everybody was happier with the sound than, you know, if you had been in 3 separate locations.
Sure.
Well, obviously, when you have a project like this, people always want to know, and I think that the End Machine has played, I believe, a total of 3 live shows for the first album. So are there plans to double that with maybe 3 more for the second album at some point? I obviously, I know the problem is always when, you know, you guys are all in other bands, you know, and that always comes first. I know you've got some Foreigner dates coming up. Robert has a lot of Warrant stuff coming up because we're doing the 30th anniversary of Cherry Pie, and George is always busy. So is it one of those things where, like, well, we hope we can do it, but you don't know how viable it really is to do live shows?
Just like you said. We'd love to do. I kind of think it's not going to happen for this album cycle.
Right.
But you know, we're thinking long term with this anyway. So hopefully somewhere down the line, long term, we'd love to go to Japan. So like I say, hopefully long term we'll get to do anything. Probably not on this album cycle, but because yes, my schedule is really getting busy with Foreigner now. And yeah, life is coming back. So live shows, I don't necessarily see them right now, but hopefully in the future.
Well, speaking of Foreigner, I did take a quick look, and I saw that there are, you know, a lot of bands you'll talk to. It's like, yeah, we've got some stuff in the works, but Foreigner has actual announced dates, and people can find those at foreigneronline.com. And you've been in the band for it's about 20 years now, right? You've been in
17, yeah.
17. Okay, yeah. So at least I wasn't too far off, and you didn't go.
No.
No, it's been 4. But so talk about just obviously just being a part of that. I'm sure. When you were first at this point, I'm sure you know everybody. You're so familiar with the whole situation. But coming into the band, no doubt being a band that you probably loved when you were younger. You heard them on the radio all the time, and like, wow, those are great songs. Never thinking like, oh yeah, one day I'll be in that band.
All right. Well, again, not sure the question, but
The question is, what was it like? Yeah, I know it's sort of like resting on a lot of other stuff. The question is basically, what was it like when you just sort of were like, oh, I'm in Foreigner now? I can imagine what it was like, growing up, no doubt being a fan, and now it's like, oh, here I am.
Right. Well, it was easier than you might think, because a lot of people think, well, Foreigner, isn't that way different than Dokken or Dio or whatever? And maybe on some levels, but as far as live performance, no. I mean, Foreigner live is a pretty high energy rock band, which is kind of what I've always done. So joining it was very natural for me. I loved the records. I loved the songs. Lou Graham's voice is one of my favorite of all times. And I think Mick is just brilliant. I love his guitar playing, and I love his songwriting, and I love him personally now, of course, too. So joining the band was actually very, very natural for me. And just I would never have dreamed I'd be in it this long, but it turned out to be such a great band and such a great gig that I'm very, very grateful. So for me, it was always a question of, wow, I love this music. I love this organization. I love the people. I just look at it as a grateful situation.
And obviously, the fact that the tour is coming up, this is definitely the summer. People are very excited because it seems pretty much everywhere you live. Although a lot of bands don't have a lot of dates announced right here in Los Angeles, but you have some for in the fall. You're starting to hear. So people in the country as a whole, they're so excited. Like, oh, this is the summer I finally get to go to concerts again. I don't know if you've played live much, but I'm going to assume that when you go out with Foreigner, it'll be the first time you're sort of in sort of a big venue like that. Are you looking forward to finally getting back out on the road and playing for a big crowd of people who are hungry for live music?
Well, we've actually done 4 shows already.
Okay.
And it was great. It was really great being back in front of people. And yes, people are hungry for music. So the answer to your question is it was great. And this will be a summer where live music is coming back. And Foreigner, yes, we're going to be we're going to be going all around the country very, very soon. So yeah, live music's coming.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I know it's a while ago now, but you were in the band for the film Rockstar, which the Steel Dragon band, and that was that movie was they basically optioned the story of Tim Ripper Owens becoming the lead singer of Judas Priest, and then when the movie gets made, it's not that at all. So by the time you come in, I assume they'd already gotten away from that. It wasn't like you thought you were going to play Judas Priest music. Did they hire you guys? It's like, okay, you're going to come up with music that is believable, or what? Where was this film in the process when you first got involved with it?
Well, they had chosen a bunch of the songs, but I got involved early enough. They actually wanted to do the music, so we did the music before we started filming, and that's how I got involved. I was actually brought in originally just as a session bass player to play on the music, and then the director watched us rehearse and he liked the chemistry that he saw, so they offered me the part, which was pretty cool. But no, we did. It was our job to kind of carve a sound, which was really fun, and it was great to work with Zach on that and Jason Bonham. So we did. We kind of built the Steel Dragon sound, which was great. And like I say, the songs were kind of there, and then we just kind of arranged them to be how this band Steel Dragon would do it, which was a lot of fun. I think it gave the movie a certain level of authenticity that I don't know if it would have had without that.
Yeah, because obviously if they had, you guys record the music and then just hired a bunch of actors, especially if it was actors who didn't know how to play their instruments, which I'm not going to call out specific movies, but I'm not musically talented, but I can tell when somebody doesn't know how to play a guitar, just the way they hold it. So I think that's a smart move on the director. Is like, yeah, but how about just these guys play it? Now, I know that some of the performance stuff they recorded, I was reading that they recorded at the sports arena here in LA. So talk about, even though, you're not really, I assume not really performing live, but you're there in front of a crowd with Mark Wahlberg as your frontman. Was it surreal, or was it like, this is just sort of like a gig, and people that were there kind of knew what they were watching. It wasn't like they were surprised that this was for a movie shoot.
Well, there was two different phases. We did a month at the sports arena, and they would have, I forget, I think it was 250 extras every day.
Oh, okay.
That were supposed to be there. Then, so those people they were all professional actors, basically. So that was very, it was still fun though. It had a real vibe of fun and kind of a carefree vibe about it. We kind of got to know some of the people in the audience. It was a lot of fun. But then to sum it all up, we did actually have a show, and Megadeth and I forget who else played, but I know that Megadeth headlined a free show that we had at the sports arena in order for us to be able to do crowd scenes with a full arena. And that was 10,000 or whatever people filled in there, and that was really fun. No, we had to go up ahead of time and tell them, look, we're filming a movie, so we're going to do the same song over again a few times, But the crowd got it. It's an LA crowd; they know what movies are.
Yeah.
And it was actually really fun, and it did actually feel like a real show, which is also another intangible element that I think helps make the movie feel a little more authentic.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And that seems to be one of those movies that, people have found in the decades since. And, I think look, I think that the story of Tim Ripper Owens is an interesting one, but I think it being a unique fictional band, I think sort of, it gives it sort of a wider appeal. And I can see why people are excited to, just check it out. It seems to be one of those kind of projects. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, and we'll circle back to End Machine to make sure everybody knows where to find out everything. You spent some time in Dio, and I just wanted to kind of ask you, just thinking back on, somebody working with somebody like Ronnie, who, it's like sort of if there was a heavy metal Mount Rushmore, obviously Ronnie would have been on it.
Yeah.
But just talk about what it was like to contribute and collaborate with Ronnie James Dio.
It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, Ronnie was fantastically talented. I mean, his singing is obvious, but he was a great band leader. He was a wonderful friend. It was a very, very special, magical part of my life, and I still think about him a lot. I still think about that band a lot. It was just a real highlight of my career, and I'll always be grateful for it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. And when I was putting the notes together, just something completely different. This is sort of a tangent, but I had read that there was a project you did that I admit that I wasn't familiar with, Underground Moon, and they did a cover of Midnight Oil's "Beds Are Burning," which I've always thought was a great song. But it's this like really heavy version of that song, and I don't know. I feel like that must have been fun to take a great song and but we're going to kind of deconstruct it and do it completely differently.
It was very, very, very fun. And I agree with you. I think it's a great song. And I totally enjoyed doing that. That was a fun I forgot we did that. Yeah, well, great.
I'm glad I can remind you,
Thank you.
Yeah. And it got a play on YouTube today because I was watching it earlier. So you see, so if you get those
on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, come on, everything's on YouTube.
Yeah. You're
well, right. Jeff, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Oh,
I really,
pleasure,
really love I love both End Machine records, but I really like this one. It's called Phase 2. Obviously people can get it everywhere. All sorts of vinyl options, digitally, CD and everything like that.
Yeah.
And for people to just find you, it couldn't be easier. You're at Jeff Pilson on Twitter, jeffpilson.com.
And
a
the
lot
real
of times,
Jeff Pilson on Instagram.
what's that?
The real Jeff Pilson on Instagram.
The real Jeff Pilson. Oh, because somebody probably got it and was
Yeah,
like, yeah, I'll give it to you, Jeff, for $1 million. No, I'll just put a reel in front of it and it's fine. Well, yeah. Well, Jeff, I've been a fan forever, so I really appreciate you chatting with me. And looking forward to more End Machine and hopefully a live show, maybe 2022, 2023. Yeah. You know,
you never know. It's possible. Thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much. Again, that is Jeff Pilson from The End Machine. Phase 2 available right now, wherever you find your music.